what I'm here for, that I'm doing a biography of Helen Douglas Mencken.
Yeah.
They've told you this? Uh, when you do a biography, you must get all sides of the story. You ran against her, and I suppose it was the only important political race that she ran, and defeated her. So, of course, you're the kind of a focal point of her political history. Do you remember her very well? I think I'd like to start by asking you, how do you remember her?
I don't know what you mean.
Well, do you remember her kindly or not kindly?
Kindly or not. I remember her for what she was.
Well, what do you think she was?
Something like that.
Well, you say you remember her for what she was. So I ask, what was she?
You know her just as well as I do.
Yes, sir, I know, of course, but it's your impressions that will make the story. Mine, I only want the impressions of others and facts, of course.
Why don't you get the people in Washington, where she said it, the way I said it, get a statement from them.
Oh, I will. Yes, I will. But you ran against her, and she, well, as her opponent, you would be at least as important as they are, and probably more important in her story. Was she someone whom you got pleasure out of running against? I mean, to say, you know, there could be races that are...
Just a matter of going to Washington, getting elected and so on.
How did you happen... I've written a few questions, so we can begin with those. Mrs. Mencken was elected in a special election to fill out the unexpired term of Robert Ransbeck in February of '46, and you ran against her in the regular primary in July of that following July. You had never run for Congress before. You'd been a judge out in the Stone Mountain Circuit, is that right? How did you happen to decide to run for Congress? Could you tell me a little about that?
Well, people of this district just didn't know how to represent the district in Congress. And got down to the question of whether if anybody ran against it, it's going to have to be me.
You mean there was no one who wanted to run against her? When you say it got down to a question of anybody was, it would be you.
Nobody wanted to run against her.
I see.
Well, I don't know the rest of that too. You just asked me whatever questions you
Well, that is, that's exactly what I would like to know. You say you don't know how to tell me about it. Had you, about your decision to run against her, it's important for me in writing this story, how you felt about it. I mean, to say you felt...
Well, I'd much rather have stayed on the bench. It would have suited me much better to have stayed on the bench.
Then you felt that it was important that she be replaced,
Yes.
and you decided to take the job on yourself. Why did you feel that she was so bad as a congresswoman?
I just couldn't tell you about that, but there were many reasons. Many reasons.
Could you give me one or two? I know that it is long ago. Did you think that the district ought to be represented by a man? Did that play a part in it?
To some extent, yes.
Did you think that she was not representative of the right kind of woman to be in Congress, or did you think that women were better not in Congress?
Well, I felt this way about her, that
Take your time. It's important to me to get what you think, so.
what is too long about that?
Well, what I'm really trying to get at is how you saw her and why you felt that, as you say, you wanted to stay on the bench, but why you felt that it was important that you give up the bench and run for Congress.
Nobody else was going to run against her. That's one reason. It had got down to where it was me and nobody. Either I run against her or nobody was going to run against her.
Well, you know, the way that, that you say that the district didn't want her, and those who were on the Democratic Executive Committee, I take it it's those whom you're speaking about. They were the leaders, of course. If no one was going to run against her, why was there no one to run against her if they felt that she didn't represent the district properly?
I don't know why, but there was nobody who wanted to run against her. They'd all rather, I believe they'd let her stay in there rather than run against her themselves.
Well, now that gets me to the point of why you felt it was so important to give up this job, which you would have preferred to stay on the bench, a relatively quiet job. Why you felt it was so important to get into the race and run against her. If you could somehow recall your feelings of that time. Please, take your time.
But one reason that I felt that she should be defeated was that was the first time we'd had any colored vote here to speak of. That's the first time niggers had voted. She just catered to the niggers, and I didn't feel like that was one reason why I felt that she ought to be defeated. She was catering to the niggers instead of white people.
I see. In what way did she cater to the Negro people? Was there anything that she did in Washington that repelled you particularly?
Yes.
Do you recall any way, that she did? Did she mix with them?
Yes.
How and where, do you know?
Other than the fact that I know that she did mix with them.
This was, of course, against the law at the time, wasn't it? She was supported by labor. Did this bother you? The CIO endorsed her.
I never in my life asked labor person or color person to vote for me. Now, either one of them.
Did they ever? I don't think they did. So you would have been elected with the vote of the white non-working people. Well, I don't know exactly how to put it either. You said that you didn't think that the black people or the laboring people had
Labor union.
labor union. Well, I see what you mean. Union members and blacks did not vote for you because there wasn't a very large Union population at that time, anyway. And you think that Helen Mencken catered both to Negro and to Union members?
Yeah.
And you felt that this was something that a representative in Congress from the Atlanta district, that they should not do?
Yeah.
Do you know of anyone who was asked to run? You say that no one else was going to run, and it was incumbent upon you to do it in the end. Was there anyone else who was asked or who even considered running against her?
Well, it's been got most of the women. But I think, yes, I think I was best.
Couldn't name any names, could you?
No.
I know how you felt about the Negro people. You were in the state legislature in the 20s. I can get the dates of that. I think you were a member in 1924.
I believe so. 4 years.
Since you felt as you did about black people, I'm told that you were the sponsor of a bill which is still on the law books, I'm told, to require everyone to carry a card to state whether they had black blood or not. Is that a fact? I suppose I can go and check the law books, but you don't have any recollection of it?
No, I don't.
Well, can you tell me anything of the circumstances, how you came to make your decision to run for Congress against Helen Mencken? I mean to say, was it just a gradual thing, or did some particular thing happen? You announced in the middle of May 1946, that you were going to run against her. Was it a long process of making up your mind, or did you suddenly decide?
Well, I thought, that somebody else would run against her. I'd much rather stay on the bench than go to Congress to go fighting in D.C. So it developed and finally developed. And Leila, I would run against her, she wouldn't have any opposition.
I see. There was a John Simon Bell who announced to run against her at one time in the early part of May in 1946, and he withdrew before you announced to run. Did you know him?
Well, I knew him then.
Would you have not stayed in the race if he had stayed in?
I would not have.
You would not have? So perhaps it was his decision to withdraw that prompted you to make the decision to get into the race?
It developed as Leila, I would run against her, she'd have no opposition. She'd go back unopposed. And I didn't want that to happen.
Well, having made the decision and having won the election, were you glad that you did? Are you happy about your years in Congress, even though you didn't want to make the race? Did you feel that it would be, when you made the decision to run, did you feel it would be an easy race to make? The executive committee, the 5th District Executive Committee, decided to put the county unit system back in where the popular vote had been applied. It had been a district-wide election under Ramspeck for about 10 or 12 years. Was this done with your approval, or do you remember? It made it easier for you to win the race, don't you think? So you didn't oppose putting you didn't oppose putting the county unit system into effect.
Well, I would say I did not. I would just guess. I would say offhand, just guessing that I probably did not oppose it.
Right, but you had nothing to do with deciding to put the county unit system back in, you
I
yourself.
don't-
Judge Shepard Bryan was chairman of the committee. Do you remember him? Was he Mrs. Mankin said he was a business partner of yours. Was that incorrect?
He was my partner.
Had he ever any time been in business
Yes,
with you?
I was in the office of Bryan and Middlebrooks for a while.
As a lawyer?
Yeah. But I was not a partner at the time.
Oh, I see. So in that sense, you had worked with him at one time.
Yes.
Well, I guess what she'd said was you were a business partner, but that would have been technically incorrect, but you did work with him.
I worked for him.
I see. You were a younger man than he was, I take it?
Much
Right. You've already answered this, but I had written down, did you disapprove of her record in Congress during the time she was there?
Yeah.
She hadn't had it very long there. She hadn't had a chance to vote on very many things. She had, she voted for OPA and a few things like that. But her votes were different from the rest of the Georgia delegation. That's certainly true. And you felt that in that sense she did not represent the people of the district? And when you got to Congress, your record was you did vote along with the rest of the delegation on most things, didn't you?
I don't remember about that. I remember I didn't care how they voted. I voted my own principles, my own convictions. I went there to vote my own principles, my own convictions. That's what I did.
Yeah. But Helen, of course, probably voted her own convictions. In that sense, her convictions were what you disapproved of, I take it. Well, you're saying this is just what the kind of thing I'm looking for. What I had hoped for was that you could sort of tell me in a little more detail why you disapproved.
No, I couldn't tell you in detail. I just didn't feel that she was the proper person to be up there in the first place, and so I didn't know that. So I thought somebody should beat her, and nobody else was going to run against her. And it finally developed that if I didn't, she'd be unopposed.
Well, I've already asked this, but I'll try to put it in another way. If it had been another woman with whom you were more in agreement politically, you would have been willing to have a woman there. If it had been someone with whom you'd been more in agreement. So when you say you disapproved of her pretty generally, I think that's the way you put it, you really mean that you disapproved of her political opinions and activities? What about her as a woman? She really looked rather different and behaved rather different. She was masculine in appearance. She talked deep. She cussed like a man.
Yeah, that's one thing that I did. Yeah, profanity.
Did she ever cuss you out at any time? Where did you hear her profanity?
Yeah, profanity.
She used it in ordinary conversations with you?
I don't remember talking to her myself very much, but she finally to them.
Yeah. Did she ever practice as a lawyer before your court out in DeKalb County? You say you hadn't really had much contact with her, but you did know her?
Sure, I did.
Right, and knew of her perhaps more than you knew her. She was pretty well known in the district. Well, there weren't many women lawyers for one thing, and she was sort of tended to be outstanding, either for her loud mouth or her point of view, or depending on how you felt about her. She'd never was not a blushing, retiring thing.
No, she wasn't.
You knew that she was there, whether you liked her or didn't like her. Had you ever? You'd never had any kind of contact with her before you ran against her for Congress. That is, you'd never had any kind of clash with her. You'd never met her and argued with her at any point. You'd never had occasion to oppose her in an ordinary conversation or to experience her point of view outside the courtroom.
I don't know what you're talking
Well, had you ever met her?
about. Sure.
Yeah. But socially? Or professionally?
I don't know what you call social.
Well, as a lawyer, as a judge, you might have encountered her in some, I don't know.
Well, I probably had. She probably, I don't remember, but she probably had cases with that people told me.
Did
At
you
least
ever-
one or two.
Um,
But
Well-
I do not remember whether she had or not.
I just wonder how you, you had these very strong opinions about her as a woman and as a politician, and I'm just trying to get some notion of how you arrived at this. Is it by reputation, perhaps, that you knew her more?
Well, what you talking about? Theory? I don't know how you mean that. Doing what you get at.
Well, not getting at anything. Just wondered how you formed your opinion about her.
Just like I formed an opinion about anybody else.
From what you heard about her from other people, as well as what you read about her in the papers.
What I saw on the set.
I see. Well, you said that you didn't think she practiced before your court, but you think perhaps she did.
Well, I do not remember, as I said, whether she practiced there or not. But if she had any practice in that court, well, of course she practiced.
Right. There was an occasion in spring of 1947. She did bring a contest against your election. Went on for a couple of years almost. And
Well, she brought the contest and just laid down.
there were depositions were taken, and everything was arranged to have the hearings, but they were not held until the spring of 1948. Do you have any recollection of why there was such a long delay? Why did it lay dormant so long? I remember there was some effort, as I recall from what I've read in the newspaper, that you had wanted it to be promptly disposed of, and she had wanted it to go on for longer. And I don't really know why. And that's what I'd like to ask you. Was this a fact, and did you try without success? Well,
I didn't pay much attention to her. I defeated her. That was that. I went on and did my business. in Congress, said, attended whatever came up and all that, forgot about her.
Well, she didn't forget about you, I guess is the way you put it. She did keep dogging your trail, didn't she?
She kept dogging the trail.
How did you feel about her? I mean, apparently you had an argument with her in her, I don't know where the location of it was. I believe it might have been in the clerk's office, in which you both called each other names. Do you have any recollection of that? You were pretty angry at her. Could you, as this was reported, and you called her a yellow-livered disgrace to humanity. Did you ever come to a point where you felt that was going a little bit far, or did you continue to feel always that that was what you would have said?
As I remember, I always continued to feel that.
Never regretted having said it.
No,
You really felt that she was... Yellow-livered means cowardly, I think, doesn't it? Did you think she was a coward?
well, I didn't think she was a coward. It was just an expression that I used.
Just an expletive. So it meant nothing. I mean, you weren't saying...
Not so much. It was just an expression.
Well, she actually, you know, if she wanted something, she went after it, and she didn't really seem to care whether hell came down on her or not. So that it probably isn't accurate to say that she was cowardly, but... Hi. This a grandchild of yours? Well, she replied to you and called you a few names, too. You remember what she said to you? No? Should I tell you? Called you a skunk. You didn't actually come to blows, did you? Well, what I wondered was, what prompted you to such an epithet? I mean, you don't recall. Were you having an argument with her?
I didn't know. See, I forgot most things that I didn't say at that time.
Well, both of you, I think it might be fair to say, were pretty strong-minded people. Whether you agreed with her or not, she was a strong-minded woman.
Have a good time, sweetheart. What'd you say?
Well, she was a rather strong-minded woman, whether you agreed with her or liked her or not. Wouldn't you say that? She made up her mind to something and stuck to it, don't you think? Did you ever come to admire her in any way, for anything? I mean, like even for her stubbornness.
Well, I don't know what you're getting at there. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, I'm not getting at anything. I'm only asking you if. Well, you say you never regretted having called her a yellow-livered disgrace to humanity. So I suppose that that you would never have developed any milder opinions of her until the very end. You considered her a disgrace to humanity. There was no. In other words, you really continued to feel bitter about her the rest of her life.
Well, I didn't feel bitter toward her, no. I just didn't care for her. See? I didn't care for her. And as far as I was concerned, it didn't matter to me what she did or when or where or why. Nothing about it. I didn't care a thing about it, one way or the other. I had my own business to attend to, right to it.
You never saw her again after the contest was over? You did?
I don't know.
I had written down some questions about the county unit system. Did you the county unit system was put back into the 5th District congressional elections, did you, and it remained in the elections as long as you were congressman, this would seem to imply that you were in favor of it. You never attempted to have it removed, or did you?
No, I haven't.
Right. Did you think it was a good system? It was desirable?
Well, I haven't thought about it in a long, long time.
Has been out a long time, that's true.
I don't remember.
At the time that it was removed in 1962, the 5th District Committee, the one that you were in charge of, decided in May of 1962 to remove it. This was before the court decision in the county unit case. And you pretty much said that it had been all right with you from the beginning, whether they had the county unit system or not. That was the way you felt at the end. It would have been immaterial to you, you said, whether the county unit system had been
That's
used.
my recollection.
Yeah.
I felt
Right,
that.
right. But in the election against Helen, it was the county unit system that won you the election. So,
Because there were more votes in Fulton County than there were in DeKalb and Rockdale. There were more popular votes
right,
than there were in DeKalb and Rockdale.
right. And you did not get the most popular votes, so without the county unit system, you would not have won the election. In that sense, it was a good thing for you, don't you agree? Yeah. You won another election later on against Baxter. Oh dear, I have it in my notes. Baxter Jones, Maddox. No, who
I
was
don't
it?
remember.
But it was one other. The year was 1952. So in a sense, it did serve you well, didn't it? The county unit system. Right.
That's according to my recollection.
Right.
But I've forgotten most.
Did you, in 1962, you lost the last election against Welton, that in 1962. I mean, the last time you were in Congress was when you lost to Welton, isn't that true? What did you do after that? Did you return to the bench?
I returned to practice.
I see. And you have now retired, I take it.
Yes.
I haven't anything more written down, actually, but I suppose I've already tried to draw you out about Mrs. Mankin, and your recollections are, it is a long time ago. I guess I'm putting my questions badly and trying to get at how you felt about her. I have been asking everyone. She was an unusual kind of woman, but she was a lawyer at a time when there were not many lawyers. She was in the
Not many
legislature.
women.
Beg your pardon?
Not many women.
Right, right. That, of course, that's what I mean. And she, there was a feeling against women in the legal profession in Georgia because there weren't many of them. And my own experience in the state legislature, I worked for the Atlanta Constitution at the time and got to know her in the state legislature, was that men felt that she was bossy and aggressive, and there was a tendency to laugh at her. Now, I myself, perhaps it was because I was a woman, I never felt that she was funny. So what I've been trying to find out and talking to people is why they think that she was laughed at. Why was this tendency on the part of people to kind of say, "Oh, that Helen Mencken, she's crazy"? Because she was intelligent. Don't you agree that she was intelligent?
She was the way. She was a smart woman.
Yes. She was smart. I don't think there's any doubt about that. She also fought hard for what she believed in. She had all the attributes of a good politician. So why was it, I am asking this of people, why was it that she was laughed at? What did she do wrong that made people laugh at her? Never. Well, I don't mean that there were these great big ha-has. I mean that there was a tendency to kind of say, "Oh, Helen, that Helen Mencken, right. She's crazy." And I've heard people say this. I've even heard people say this recently in talking to people, that she was kind of a little crazy. Did you think that she was crazy? No. Well, I guess what I'd like to get you to say, and what I guess that I can't, is why you didn't like her. You told me that her politics, that she was catered to the blacks and to union leaders. But, maybe this isn't, I guess in my opinion, this isn't enough to have made you feel as strongly about her as you did. So what I'm trying to get you to say, and I'm not saying the question's right, obviously, is why you felt so strongly about her.
I don't know why. That's one of those things that goes in the course of a lifetime.
Right. Was there any other woman politician or other woman lawyer whom you had such strong antipathy to here in Atlanta?
I don't recall any of that. I don't know lawyers at that time myself.
How about your colleagues in Congress? Did you find anybody who aroused your ire and anger as much as Helen? Well, there were a number of women in Congress at that time. I mean, during the years that you were there. And actually, I don't recall.
There was one woman I believe from Arkansas. She was a husband. I didn't feel like she was. I didn't have any feelings towards her. And then I would have had towards any of the women. I don't know just who other women there were. But as far as I remember, I didn't have any objection to them. People wanted to represent on the board represented.
So that, in a way, she was, you hated her more than most.
I don't know that I'd say I hated her. No, I don't recall that I hated her at all.
Well, okay. Opposed her. Is that a fair word?
I don't know what you did. I don't know what you mean by that.
By my use of the word opposed? Well, I don't know. I did try to explain. I suppose that the answer is that you didn't like her, as you say, that she catered to the blacks and to the union labor. And I had the feeling that, that's not enough for the strong feelings that you had against her, but perhaps that's the only explanation. When I was just trying to draw you out about her and why you felt so strongly about her. That's all I was getting at.
Well, I just felt that she was not a proper person to represent this district in Congress. And for that reason, that's
Well, all right, I won't. I'll drop that line of questioning. Actually, I guess that you told me, really, what I had down here to ask you. Do you think that I guess maybe this isn't a fair question, but that she's worth writing a biography about? I mean, is she someone who ought to be remembered? Is what I guess I.
Certainly, yes. I'm glad you're writing a biography.
Oh, all right. Glad to hear that. It would help me in doing it if you could orient your recollections of the period better, but I suppose time has passed. So
Yeah,
that-
time, long time. I've forgotten all the things that I probably knew, remember very well then, which been so long, I've forgotten.
Yeah. Well, as I said, my feeling was that you felt very strongly about this woman, and
I
trying to get at the
did,
explanation
yeah.
of this.
I wouldn't have run against her if I hadn't felt strongly about it, because I just felt that she was not the proper person to represent this district in Congress.
And you think that the explanation of that is simply her political, as you say, catering to the Negro vote and the Union labor?
Well, I don't know that I would say that at the time. I just felt that she was not the kind of person that should represent this district up there in Washington.
Well, what I'm getting
Not-
at,
not specifically because she catered to the Negroes or to labor or to anybody else. I didn't care who she catered to. I just felt that she was not the proper kind of person to represent this district in Congress.
right. Well, now you say, what am I getting at? What I'm getting at is, what I would like to, if you could explain it fuller, is if it wasn't her political views about the blacks and about union labor, in what way was she not a proper person? She had no, there were no charges, well, how should I put it? I mean to say, she led a fairly conservative kind of life. You know, she had a husband and a stepson. So what I'm getting at is, why did you think she was not the proper kind of person? In what way was she improper?
Well, you will have a feeling about persons, about people. Generally speaking, they're either the right kind of people or they're not the right kind of people. It's the same thing. And it's just all of a sudden, I just felt that she was not the right person to be up there representing herself in Congress.
Okay.
Representing Atlanta district in Congress.
Well, I guess that you know, that is the way you put it, and I won't pursue that any further because, as I said, what I'd like to get from people and what people are generally telling me is their perception of her, how she fit in as a person. And she, as we've said, she was very strong-minded. People either loved her or hated her. You say you didn't hate her, but many people did. Many people did, and she was very, you know, she was vindictive and, you know, if she went after you, she really went after you hard, as you know, because you were one that she went after, and there was.
But it didn't bother me that she went after me.
Right. Did you feel that she, like we say, she went after you? She did really fight hard to try to unseat you. Did you think that she followed legal? Did she follow the law, or did she use unfair tactics?
What you mean by that?
Well, I don't know how to put it otherwise. Was she unfair in what she did in fighting you?
I think I felt this way about her. That she wanted me out. And whatever it took to get me out, she'd be willing to do it.
Even if it was not legal? even if it
Well,
was
I don't
illegal,
know that
unfair?
she would- I don't know that I would say it's anything illegal, but she certainly would do everything she could to get me out.
Well, but fighting fair is one thing, and fighting unfair is another. You did have the feeling she'd fight you hard, but fight you fair?
Well, I don't know that I would say that either. I think she wanted me out of the office. That's to get me out.
Right. Well, in the event, as things turned out, did she use methods which at any point went beyond fair and legal? Well, let's just use the word fair. Okay, all right. Did she use some illegal means? So that she did fight you with the legal tools at hand and never resorted to, well, unfair tactics or underhanded tactics or...
I think she would have. If she felt that she could get me out one way or the other, I think she'd done whatever she could to get me out.
Well, she didn't get you out, didn't succeed, so that in the end, I suppose, no charges were ever brought. I mean, you never brought any charges against her, never took her to court for violating the law or doing what was illegal, so I suppose that you could say that she fought fair. Or
Well,
you don't want to say that.
I would say that she fought fair, fairly.
You would say or you
I
wouldn't?
said, I don't know that I would say
Right.
that she fought fairly or unfairly. I just knew that she wanted me out. She would have done whatever it took to get me out. I think she would have. If she could have gotten me out, she would have. But there was no way she could get me out. People I went up there and did my job, and the people in Washington realized that I was up there doing my job and attending to my business, and that's what they wanted, so they just were glad that I was there, and they respected me, and they, as I said, they were glad I was there and attended to my business, and they recognized that, and so that was that.
What defeated you in the end? Have you any feeling about that?
The thing that defeated me was when you go to Washington and stand up and vote your convictions, every time you vote your convictions, you make somebody mad. And finally, I voted my own convictions and stood by my own principles sufficiently that I finally made enough people angry with me that they voted me out.
I see. So it was just in the normal course of political evolution. You know, you just kind of came to the end of your support?
Yeah, I would be.
Right. I don't know what... I think, well, I don't know, I haven't checked this, and of course this isn't important, but would you have won that last election if the county unit system had been in effect? Do you remember that, in 1962? It's a, you know, it's not important, but it's something I can find out in the newspapers. It was in 1962, though, wasn't it? Well, is there anything else that you can tell me or would like to tell me about Helen Douglas Mencken and your encounters with her?
She was just a person that ran against me. I defeated her because I attended to my business in Washington. People knew it. They supported me because they respected me. They knew that I was on the job, and that I was attending to the job and attending to the business.
You don't look back on Mrs. Mencken with any kind of, well, what should we say, forgiveness, or do you look back on her with any kind of warmth, or do you see her as you last saw her? Well, have the intervening years made you feel any warmer toward her?
Just one of those things that I said, that come up in the course of a lifetime. She was the person I had opposition every time I ran. She was just an opponent.
Right. When I asked you if you thought that she was someone worth remembering, you agreed, I believe. Did you say? I mean to say that my doing a biography of her is a worthwhile project. Right. Well, is it that you think any women in public life should have their history written, or is she in any way special in your recollection? I don't know. I'm putting that badly again. Why do you think it's a worthwhile biography? Who in public life? Well, if you have nothing further that you can offer me, independent of what I have asked you, I will stop.